الحمد لله الحمد لله الذي الحمد لله يخلق ويختار وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده واحد القهار وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله المصطفى المختار صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه المنهاج منهم والأنصار وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. This is your brother, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is your brother Nafis Abu Zayd with a quick reminder. Tonight, inshallah ta'ala, as the moon has been sighted by the permission of Allah Jalla wa ala, and tonight starts the first night of Ramadan. And normally the custom is that we perform Salatu Tarawih for the first night of Ramadan. All right? And tomorrow will start the first day of Ramadan, where we fast in that month because the night precedes the day. So we wanted to do a brief little talk, inshallah ta'ala, kayfiyah to how do a person pray the Salatul Tarawih at home, being as though we're caught during the time where most of the masajids are closed and they will not be open for the Salatul Tarawih. So we want to explain how is this to be offered while you are at home. Okay, some of us are fortunate enough to be married by the permission of Allah Jalla wa ala. Some of us have families, some of us have large families, some of us aren't married, and some of us don't have family members. So how do it pertain to offering Tarawih? First and foremost, let's explain that Tarawih is a salat that have many different names, okay? Have many different names. And the word Tarawih, as they mentioned, it comes from istiraha, is to take a rest in between the two units of the prayer. Okay, so an individual, when they would pray, for example, they would pray 2 rakats, 2 units, and then they would pray 2 units, and then they would take a rest, a moment of rest. This istiraha is what the name Tarawih has derived its name from. Also, it is also a prayer that has also got the name which is called Qiyamul Layl. All right, the standing at night, or what we call another name for it is known as Salatu Tahajjud. All right, Salatu Tahajjud. All right, when you wake up, as that word is mentioned in the Quran as well as in the Hadith, when an individual wake up and they pray. So all of these prayers, all of these names are for the same particular prayer. Okay, as Sheikh Al-Albani explains, rahmatullah ta'ala alayh. Tayyib. Now the ruling for Tarawih. The ruling and the correct view by the permission of Allah Jalla wa ala is that it is from the nafil, min al-nawafil, meaning it is from those things which are supererogatory and it is not obligatory. It's not from the fard salat. Okay? In other words, when we say it's not obligatory, an individual is not deserving of the punishment of Allah Jalla wa ala if they leave it off. Okay, if a person leaves it off, they're not deserving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishment. It's not obligatory that anyone have to offer Salatul Tarawih according to the most correct view. All right, the basis for Salatul Tarawih comes in the hadith of our beloved Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he led the people in prayer for the first 3 nights, and then when they came out for the fourth, or when they came out, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't come out that night. And they said to the Prophet ﷺ, I saw what you were doing, and I did not come out. And the reason what prevented me from coming out was I didn't want it to be a burden upon the ummah to believe that the Salatul Tarawih is something that is obligatory. All right. So they use this. The scholars use this hadith, the hadith of Aisha anha, of our mother, as a basics that the Prophet ﷺ prayed or performed Salatul Tarawih. Okay, that's clear. Now, as far as the hadith that comes in the Muwatta, all right, Imam Malik, the hadith that deals with during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that he entered the masjid during Ramadan and he saw that there were a group of individuals who were praying over to this side, and then there was another group of individuals who were praying, which shows you that the masjid, and anyone that's been to Medina or even the Haram, they can see how big the masjid actually is. So it's possible to have multiple different groups in prayer. So they all were doing it. Umar ibn Khattab, seeing this, what he did is appointed the Qurra, like Ubayd ibn Ka'ab, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ. He appointed him, and he appointed some other individuals who had proficiency in the Quran, have memorized the Quran, to lead the people in congregation, all right? To lead the people in congregation so that they can offer the prayer together, all right? And then we know that there are narrations where the Prophet said, "Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban kufira lahu ma taqaddam min dhanbi." The Prophet said, whoever stands along with the Imam during the, and he's talking about the Tarawih prayer here, whoever stands along with the Imam out of Iman and with hoping for Allah's reward, the person's previous sins will be forgiven. All right? Previous sins in the early math, meaning that the minor sins will be forgiven. Tayyib. At any rate, we understand that the basis and that this is something that was done and that the Tarawih is to be performed. Now, but it's not obligatory. How do you do it home? Now, we have the issue when it comes to the issue of performing Salat al-Tarawih at home. If an individual do not pray Tarawih at home, there is no sin upon you. All right? Let's make this clear. If you go throughout the whole month of Ramadan and you did not pray Tarawih not once, there isn't a sin upon you. But what you want to take in consideration now, the month of Ramadan, you want to get all of the best reward you can. So you know that at the end of the month of Ramadan, which is the last 10 nights, where Laylatul Qadr comes in those last 10 nights, you want to be in a position where you're seeking nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal. As Allah said, تَتَنَزَّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالْرُوحِ, that on that night that the angels and the ruh, they come down by the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ أَمْرٍ, right? And they come down on that night. So we know that you want to be either making dua, you want to either be praying, you want to either be reading the Quran, etc., etc. So praying is something that is essential. The Prophet ﷺ began to make i'tikaf in the beginning of the first 10 nights of Ramadan, the first 10 days of Ramadan, because it wasn't clear that it was in the last 10 nights. And then he moved it, as the ulama explained, to the last 10 nights because Allah Jalla wa Ala mentioned it in the last 10 nights. Tayyib. So, if you're going to pray Tarawih at home, now, do not feel overwhelmed. For those of you who are mahir, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have blessed to be proficient in reading the Quran and reading the Arabic and understanding how to read. When we say proficient, we don't mean you know how to read Arabic. We mean you know how to read bi-tajweed, bi-ahkam tajweed. You know how to read with the rules of tajweed. All right? If Allah bless you to be proficient and to have some some Quran, a portion of Quran under your belt, then you faqra'u ma tayassara min al-Quran. Then you recite much of the Quran. It's made easy for you. All right? This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with. Then you should lead by what you have in your breast. Okay? You should lead by what you have in your breast. If, for example, you're not proficient, okay, and you're not proficient in reading according to the tajweed rules, or you're not proficient in reading the Arabic, okay, then in this case, the surahs that you do have from the surah that you memorize, whether it's from the smaller surahs of Juz Amma, or whether it's a long surah, is nothing wrong. And this is something that you should take advantage of. There's nothing wrong reciting the same surah over and over. Do you understand this? You can offer one rakat, one unit of prayer with that surah. The next rakat with that same surah. All right? And you can end with an odd. Okay? You can end with an odd. So meaning you can do 3. You can do 2, end with an odd one, your widow will be 3. You can do 4, end with an odd one, your widow will be 5. You can do 6 and end with an odd one, your widow will be 7. Do you understand? So you can do it with those short surahs that you have. So that becomes clear. Now, as the issue of reading from the Mus'haf, Sheikh Abdullah ibn Abbas, the former Mufti of Saudi Arabia, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, he was asked this question, and many of the scholars before him, preceding him, were asked this question about the permissibility of reading the Quran from the Mus'haf, okay? If the person has to read the Quran from the Mus'haf, then Sheikh bin Baz said that he doesn't see any problem with this, any problem whatsoever with you reading from the Mus'haf. So if you can read from the Mus'haf and lead your family in the prayer from the Mus'haf, la bas bi. There's no problem according to what is correct. However, they do say give preference if you have surahs memorized with you, and if you can rely on your memory more, then you can read from your memory, which is more preferable than you read it from the Mus'haf. But if you have to read from the Mus'haf, la bas bi, there's no problem whatsoever. It's grounds for that and the permissibility of that based off the hadith that mentions that the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, where it was told that she can lead, it can be read and lead the people in prayer, meaning that he can read from the Mus'haf, a slave can read from the actual Mus'haf of the Quran, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. Now, as regards to the units of prayer for Tarawih at home, okay, as far as the number, there is no set limit for Tarawih, all right? I want to make this clear. According to the correct view, and when I say correct view, meaning based off the strongest evidence, and that's the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, where he mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ was asked kayfiyat salat qiyam al-layl, how to offer the night prayer. The Prophet ﷺ said mathna, mathna. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said two, and he did not place a limit. He did not set a restriction on how many units of prayer you can pray. He said, but end it with an odd. Make the last one an odd one. So the ulama, from amongst them, Sheikh Uthaymeen, or Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah, who explained this in detail, they explained clearly that an individual can offer 20 rakats, but he have to end it with 21. He can offer 40 rakats, units of prayer, and he can end it with 41. He can offer 60 rakats, but he can end it with an odd one. He can offer with 61, all right? There's no set limit. I just want to get that clear. So if you feel like praying, 3 units of prayer, 2 and end it with 1, or you feel like praying 5, or even if you feel like praying 20, and you end it with 21, la bas bi, there is no problem because there's no set limit. Now, the wisdom behind lengthening the prayer and praying with additional units of prayer versus praying with a less number of units of prayer of raka'at, then that comes in the issue far as the person's kayfiyah of how they're going to pray. And they base this off the narration that is mentioned by Aisha radiallahu anha about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed the night prayer. And she explained how the Prophet ﷺ performed the night prayer. And that she said that rarely he will pray and stand in qiyam. And when he was standing qiyam, she said, don't ask me as far as its length. And then she said when he would go down and pray in ruku', she says, don't ask me about the beauty of it or as far as length, but the fact that it will be at the same, it will be the same amount or same amount of time that he was standing. And his sujood would be the same amount of time that he was in ruku'. All right, so describing how the Prophet ﷺ prayed and the different ways or manners that he prayed, you can see that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ prayed differently. Okay, and one of the things that the ulama explained, especially when it comes to acts of ibadat, if there are different ways to be performed, as Shaykh Uthaymeen rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, he explains about this issue. He says whenever you have an act of ibadah which is mutanawwi', for example, we have wudu, act of worship is wudu. The Prophet ﷺ in Sahih Bukhari, in the book of wudu, it is mentioned right after each other. One time he performed it 3 times. Another time he performed it 2 times. Another time he performed it once. All right? When you have an act of ibadah that is done various ways, then it is best that the servant do it those different ways. It is best that a person do those perform those different types of acts of ibadah, so not to become robotic, not to become as a person who just ritually does something and don't understand why they're doing it. So you should switch it up, okay? So the Prophet ﷺ, when he made the night prayer, sometimes he would perform 5 rakats straight, all right? 4 rakats straight, and he wouldn't make the tashahhud until the 5th one. Do you understand that? Sometimes he would do 7. He wouldn't make the, do you understand it? Sometimes he would do 7, and he would make the tashahhud into the 8th one, all right? There are different ways, as our mother Aisha radiallahu anha said, the way that the Prophet ﷺ performed the night prayer. All right, in detail, you can look in the book called Qiyam al-Layl, by Muhammad Jibali, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, where he translates a lot of the works from Sheikh Nasruddin al-Albani pertaining to the issue of how the night prayer is to be performed. As far as the question, can you perform 3 raka'ats straight like it's Maghrib? La. No, yes and no. All right. know if you're only going to perform 3 rak'ahs. If you're only going to perform 3 rak'ahs, it should be a shaf, which is 2, and it should be a witr, which is 1. Meaning the shaf should end with a taslim, a tashahhud, saying the Ibrahim, and then making sure you salam out. All right? That should happen. Now, and you get up and offer the 1 rak'ah by itself. But when I say yes, then that goes back to what I was talking about before. It is reports that the Prophet ﷺ performed the night prayer, where he prayed 5 units of prayer straight. Okay? He did the tashahhud on the 6th. Or where he prayed 7 straight, and he did the tashahhud on the 8th. All right? Okay? These are cases where you'll be praying them in together. As far as if you're just praying 3 rak'ahs, then it's a shaf, which ends with a taslim, and then you should get back up and offer the witr. And Allah Jalla wa Ala knows best. Now that we understand the number and the limitations, do what is made easy. Stick to the principle. The Prophet ﷺ, as Aisha Anha mentioned, that whenever there was 2 affairs that the Prophet ﷺ had to pick from, he would choose the less hard one. He would choose the one that's most easy. The most one is the what? Less burdensome. So do that which is easy enough for you to do. All right? Increase in the ibadah when you get closer to the last 10 nights of Ramadan. When you get closer to the last night of Ramadan, increase in the acts of ibadah, all right? Increase in them. That's meaning more thicker. That meaning even more additional rakats, all right? That meaning even more supplications, dua, more reading of Quran, these things like that, etc. Now, when you're home and you're praying with your family, I want to mention this. There is a position, as Sheikh Salih Fawzan Hafidhullah mentioned, that the permissibility of a woman praying next, side by side, on the right side of her husband, is permissible. Just like her praying a little bit behind her husband is permissible. However, the Sheikh does not mention his proof so far as I found, whereas though the woman can pray side by side with the men, but at least I have sufficed myself with mentioning the statement, and you can attribute back to the actual scholar who passed the fatwa about the woman praying next to the men side by side. As far as you having children, now, it's encouraged that your children pray. Understanding that if your children is at the age of 7, then that's when they need to learn about the salat. It becomes obligatory for them to know about the salat and how to pray. All right, so they can occupy the space when they are the age of 7. They call this the age of tamyiz. All right, but when they are not the age of 7, okay, then they are encouraged to pray with you, but you do not make it binding on them. All right, you do not make it binding on them. If they get in or if they leave back out, you don't feel any type of way. They're going to come in and come out, because we're dealing in a time where our children are going to be home while we're praying, so they can be a little bit distracting and so forth. So allow them to get in and allow them to do something and try to practice some of the mannerisms of the Prophet ﷺ with his grandsons. It was times that he would be in prayer and the Hassan and Hussein would be on his back, and he would let them play on his back, and he had patience until when they got done playing, that's when he would lift up, and he wouldn't move them out the way, whereas though we ask Allah to grant us some patience to deal with our children. But at any rate, we would try to take from the Prophet ﷺ, as Allah said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Messenger of Allah, you have a beautiful example. Tayyib, so now that we got that all clear, when you pray with your family, if you got a large family by the permission of Allah, you can take your time. If you got to read 1 surah, 1 rakat, that's okay. All right? If you have more Quran with you, if you're reading from the Mus'haf and it's easier for you to read a page, that's okay. If it's easier for you to read a rub'a, which normally consists about 4 pages or 3 pages or 2 pages and a half, then that's okay. But what you want to take in consideration of, okay, is the simple fact that when you're praying and you're reciting, you want to take consideration of what's going to be easy for you, because it's not obligatory that you have to finish the entire Quran in the month of Ramadan. That's not obligatory. All right? It actually is encouraged. There's no limit on how many times you can finish the Quran in Ramadan either. just like it's no obligatory that you have to finish it in Ramadan. So likewise, if a person finished the Quran 3 times in the month of Ramadan, there's no problem with that. If a person finished the Quran only once, there's no problem with that. If the person doesn't finish the Quran at all in the month of Ramadan, there's no problem with that. There's no reports that have come from the Messenger of Allah that's authentic that is obligatory that you have to finish the entire Quran. So we go back to the asl. Allah says in the Quran, fi Surah Muzammil, and the last verse, Allah mentioned فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرُوا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Recite much of the Quran that is made easy for you. Remember that. All right, so when you're praying, remember these things. The woman cannot lead the men. All right, for you women who are not married, okay, you cannot lead the men. And the men we're talking about is men who are of the age of puberty. All right, men who are of the age of puberty that are more up, and Allah Jalla wa Ala knows best. There are differences of opinion amongst the earlier different madhabs, but we're not going to go into them because there's no benefit in going into them because that's not the majority of view, and we don't want to use any odd things. And the way that the woman pray, she prays in the middle and act to the back of the row of the men and not in the front. So she cannot lead the men in prayer. Do you understand that? She do not lead the men in prayer. If she has a young boy, all right, and that boy is even 6. I want you to understand that there's a hadith that comes in Bulugh al-Maram, in the book, in the chapter which is called Sifat Salat al-Nabi, and the chapter which is called the Prophet Prescribed Prayer, or the characteristics of the Prophet ﷺ prayer in Bulugh al-Maram by Ibn Hajar Asqalani. He brings a beautiful hadith that there was a 6-year-old young boy who even led some of the companions in prayer. Do you understand this? So the ulama, they differ in concern of the age of tamyiz being 6 or 7. However, the most correct view is that it's the age of 7 only because we have a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, command your children to pray at the age of 7. So the hadith is textually stated that the age of 7 is the age of tamyiz. But it does not mean that a child at the age of 6 cannot discern between what is right and wrong and cannot learn like we see in the hadith that comes in Bulugh al-Maram. So if you have a child that is able to read from the Mus'haf, okay, and lead you, sister, in prayer, la bas be. There's no problem with that. That child can lead you in the prayer. Do you understand that? And this is a beautiful opportunity, man. Really, it's so beautiful on so many levels that I mean, it's sad in one incident, but it's more beautiful in so many levels because it brings us to come closer to one another. It allows us to really pray as a family unit. It allows the children to pray along with the family. It allows the husband to become an example to pray along with the family. It allows the wife to pray along with the husband and even with the children. And this shows structure. Whenever you want structure in your household, whenever you want structure in your life with a family setting, then the main pillars of structure is going to come from what? The salat. How well you guard the salat within your family and how well you are an example in the salat is going to give you the foundational structure you need. What's my proof? Allah Jalla wa Ala, He says in the Quran, fi Surah Taha, where He tells the husband to command the family. He says, وَأْمُرُ بِأَهْلِكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ, and command your family with the prayer. وَاسْتَبِرُ عَلَيْهَا, and remain patient and patient and patient, commanding your family with what? The prayer. Okay? Teaching them if they need to learn, instructing them, showing them. And this is what we seen from our Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when it came down to the prayer, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha said that the Prophet sallam will wake her up when he's getting ready to perform the witr. So you don't have to perform all the units of prayer with you if it's not obligatory. If it's supererogatory, you can wake her up so that she can pray the witr with you. It's something the Prophet ﷺ did. There's narration showing that the Prophet ﷺ said that blessed be the woman or the man who wakes up in the middle of the night. He performs the prayer and he wakes his family up to pray along with him. The prayer plays a direct role in the structure of a family unit. All right. Likewise, there is the verse that comes in Surah Maryam where Allah talks about one of the prophets, okay, Ishmael, that one of the things that he would do with his family is that he would command them to pray. So prayer plays an integral part, and that's what we get to do during this quarantine time. We get more closer. They're talking about how domestic violence have risen since the time of the quarantine. And that goes to show you that man and woman, when you get together, there need to be structure. There needs to be structure. It cannot be your opinion, his opinion, and this is the way that it rolled. No, it has to be the book of Allah and the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The problem that happens is we leave the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam due to multiple reasons, and the main reasons is because we are ignorant of the book of Allah and the Sunnah. We are ignorant of the book of Allah and the Sunnah, so we don't know how to refer to them as a judge. And that is a big problem. But you have an opportunity during Ramadan to do that. Pick a book. Read. If you don't want to hear your husband reading to you, then listen to some lectures that are online. And then listen to some of the ulama that is trustworthy. Do not allow your family members to listen to people who are not coming with the correct understanding of how to approach the Islamic text. It's important that this is a part of guarding your family. Allah says, "Oh, you who believe," what did he say? "Save yourselves and your family from the fire." So it's important that you do not do that. The woman, you need to pay attention to your husband. If your husband do not want you to listen to something that is going against what is understood from the Quran and the Sunnah in the correct way, then you don't listen to it. I'm not talking about listening to Fulan versus Alan. That's not what I mean. I'm talking about listening to the understanding in the format the way that it is. If Alan is from Timbuktu, if Alan is from Ethiopia in Britain, in UK, or if Alan is in this land or that land, but he's coming with the format, Quran, Sunnah, ala fahm salaf. He is sticking to the trustworthy scholars and explaining it. La bas bi. No matter what race he is, no matter whatever, then there's no problem with that. But if he's going against those regular formats, then we stay away from them, inshallah ta'ala. Now, alhamdulillah, as far as the issue of when to pray Tarawih, all right? Now, in the masjid, we normally would pray Tarawih after what? After Salatul Isha. Okay, but being as though we're not in the masjid, okay, you can pray Tarawih after Isha if it's better for you. Okay, if it's better for you, you can pray after Isha. If you want to let it and delay it to a little bit more of the night, there's no problem with you praying. Inshallah, there's no problem with you praying it in the middle of the night. Okay, you don't have to pray it after Isha. If you're not praying in the masjid, you can pray. Remember, just end it with an odd number. You can do 3, you can do 5, you can do 7, you can do 9. End it with an odd number. Okay, I did one thing I didn't mention. I did touch on it, but I didn't mention. I want to stop because my group is coming in. That is, Sheikh Uthaymeen and Sheikh Salih Fawzan was saying that the kayfiyah, I touched on it a little bit, but I didn't understand it. If you're going to pray additional units of prayer, like 23, for example, then that means that your rakat should be light. Your recitation should be short, and your rakat should be light. But if you're going to pray 11 rakats and you're going to stick to just 11, and you're going to say this is the sunnah, then your recitation and your rakat, your unit should be lengthy. Okay, you should try to imitate the Prophet as much as possible. All right, it should be lengthy. So the more lengthy you are with your recitation, the more lengthy you are in your prayer, okay, is going to determine how many units of prayer you're going to pray. That's the hikmah normally what it is. Okay, so if you want to stick to the 11, then stick to the way that the Prophet prayed the 11. Okay, if you're not and you're going to do more, then you do that, and the ulama, they explained that. All right. As far as individuals who are home by themselves and they're praying by themselves and they're not married, then let best pray, because understand that there's nothing wrong with you praying by yourself. There are positions that are held that the Tarawih should be prayed by yourself anyway. But nonetheless, regardless of whether those positions are solidified or anything, it still doesn't take away from the fact that if you pray, that Allah Jalla wa Ala is aware of your prayer, that you stand, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala actually see those who are muhsinun. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if an individual was by himself and he's not leading no one but himself, can he read from the mushaf? All right, can he read from the mushaf if he's praying munfaradan by himself? All right. Now, generally, the ulama does not specify whether or not this is for a person who just leading others, or is this for a person praying by itself? So Allah knows best that the same fatwa that applies to a person reading from the Mus'haf will be the same if a person was praying by themselves. And you might say, brother, why is I'm even mentioning this? Is an important reason why I'm mentioning this, because the hadith that is normally used for the permissibility of reading from the Mus'haf for the night prayer is basically dealing with when the female, she said that the Prophet ﷺ said, ordered the slave from amongst her to read the Mus'haf and lead them in prayer. Do you understand that? So it was a congregation there. So a person might think that, okay, reading from the Mus'haf is only when it's a congregation, as opposed to when you're by yourself. Can you read from the Mus'haf? All right? Another thing you want to do during the daytime, if you're going to read any surah, no matter what surah you're going to read that you might memorize or what surah you're going to, try to do a general tafsir. Read a general tafsir, okay? And they got many of them out there that are simple. When I say general tafsir, something that is very simple that explains to you a little bit what you're saying and what you're going over so that you can ponder and reflect on the book of Allah, all right? One of the things that the Prophet ﷺ would do, that the ulama explained, that the Prophet ﷺ was paying attention to what he was reciting. And it's permissible, especially in a supererogatory prayer, to do this. Whenever the Prophet ﷺ came across an ayat that mentioned the hellfire, he would seek refuge with Allah from the hellfire. Whenever he came across a verse that mentioned the paradise, he would ask Allah Jalla wa Ala for paradise. Do you understand? They said that this is one of the signs that the Prophet ﷺ was aware of what he was actually saying in the prayer. And this is something that you want to try to do yourself. If you come across a verse that talks about hellfire or punishment, seek Allah refuge from hellfire and punishment. If you come across a verse that talks about paradise, ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to grant you that paradise. Do you understand? Now, does Tarawih have to be audible and inaudible? The Tarawih prayer should be audible, okay? It should be audible. But then there must be something understood. It should not be too loud, and it should not be too low. It should be a middle course, as Allah says in Surah Al-Isra, where Allah Jalla wa Ala calls, where He says, "La takhafid bi salatika," do not be little, meaning do not recite so little where it cannot be heard, or recited in secret where it cannot be heard with your salat. Here, salat, he meant qira'ah, with your recitation. And it's mentioned in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ was walking by and he seen that Abu Bakr and he heard Umar, they both were praying the night prayer, and the Prophet ﷺ told Abu Bakr to raise his voice a little bit, and he told Umar to let his voice down a little bit. And that's the way it is. So when you pray the Tarawih prayer, it should be said audible, okay? Enough where you can hear it, and if you're leading someone enough to where they can hear it, you don't have to shout it out or be so loud. And you don't have to be so low that you don't hear yourself or no one actually hear you, okay? So I wanted to make sure I bring that up in terms of praying Tarawih at your house. Another thing I want to bring up, there is no permissibility whatsoever of following someone online while they are praying Tarawih. If you're watching the people pray Tarawih, but you're not joining the prayer itself, la bas be. There's no problem with that. The only problem comes in when you call yourself takbir and you call yourself following the imam online while they're doing Tarawih. And you're going to find, believe me, brothers and sisters, when I say this, you're going to find people in this time. You're going to find people who ascribe themselves to ilm, to knowledge. You're going to find people who ascribe themselves to being da'is, the callers, who are going to make concessions, who are going to say that it's okay for you to follow someone online. All of that is batil. And they're going to come up with some strange positions and odd positions that are mentioned within the madhahib, in the different madhahib. However, they are not supported or strong. The ulama have made it clear. You have to physically be present in order to perform. Likewise, you cannot turn on your favorite qari and be led in prayer by a recording, okay? The same ruling applies that you cannot pray behind somebody while online. Now, listening to somebody recite online while they praying Tarawih and they got a congregation, because a congregation is two or more, and if that's the case, then there's no problem, but you cannot pray with them. All right, you wouldn't be considered as praying with them. You consider just listening, or you watching. La best being, that's what we see mostly every year when they normally record the Tarawih in the Haram. We see that, but we're not praying along with them in the Haram. We're actually just watching. Okay, so there's no problem with that. The problem comes when we think that we can do it. And people are going to try to make concessions for this. Another thing I want to touch on, you're not missing out on group iftars. There's no such thing of group iftars in the first place. Sheikh Salih Fawzan already read that out. As far as getting together with group iftars, and I know a lot of people look forward to that. There's nothing wrong with feeding someone that is poor. There's nothing wrong with aiding someone or coming together to eat. We're not saying that. But you're not missing out because I can't have a group iftar. If you have a family, eat with your family. One of the things that we forget with the sunnah is what? The family is not close to each other because when we eat, we have individual plates. Something that Sheikh Yahya brought a beautiful point in his book that I actually have in my library that talks about the 40 ahadiths of the etiquettes of eating. And he mentioned in there how we eat individually, which brings about separation in the heart, where we should eat collectively. So if you got a family of 3, all of y'all should eat collectively. You got a family of 5, y'all should eat collectively. If you got a family of 6, 7, y'all should eat collectively. Meaning in terms of wash your hands properly. Okay? You should eat collectively. This will do what? This will remove selfishness. It will remove the person feeling like they have to be individually. Eat collectively. You will feel that love that you're trying to get when you do a group iftar. Okay? When you do a group iftar, try to be more kindness and courteous, inshallah ta'ala. Whatever I left off, I'm getting ready to close now. Whatever I left off dealing with the Salatul Tarawih at home, then that's for my own deficiencies, because if I don't remember right now some of the issues of doing it, but hopefully I covered the things. We dealt with the ruling of it. We dealt with where Tarawih is divided from. We dealt with the limit. There's no set limit for it. We dealt with how it's supposed to be formed. We also dealt with the permissibility of reading from the Mus'haf, whether you are leading someone or whether you are praying by yourself. We dealt with multiple different issues, alhamdulillah. Whatever I fell short in and my talking, inshallah ta'ala, and what I cover extensively, and remember what the ulama said about this issue, then it's definitely for myself and the shaitan. What I said is correct. It's from Allah Jalla wa Ala. Ramadan Mubarak. Ramadan Mubarak. Tonight at Maghrib, Ramadan is in, so it's permissible to say in the beginning of the month of Ramadan words such as Ramadan Mubarak, such as Ramadan like this. These words you can say. All right? That's permissible. As far as the middle of Ramadan, la. We don't say that, okay? We don't say Ramadan Mubarak as far as the middle of Ramadan. All right? We don't do that. We do it in the beginning. It's okay to celebrate the entrance of the month of Ramadan. All right? And also, as far as Ramadan being a mercy in the beginning and forgiveness in the middle and such repentance in the end, all of that, those ahadith the ulama mentioned are weak. They are weak ahadith. They are weak narrations, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. Ramadan is a month where mercy is in it. It is a month where the Quran comes down. So try, as Imam Shafi'i and many of the Imams, try to focus on the Book of Allah really during this month. Try to focus on the Book of Allah, whether you're reading the English Noble Translation, which is more preferable than a Pickthall or a Yusuf Ali or any of the other ones, National, what's the name? Try to use the Dr. Muslim Khan, which is more because it sticks with the tafsir of Qurtubi Ibn Kathir, and it also sticks with the hadith, and it brings narrations and help you understand what the wording is. This is why we say stick with them, not because it's Dr. Muslim Khan, but because of the method that Hum and Dr. Hilali actually brought with their rendering the interpretation of the meaning of the Quran. The Noble Quran is actually beneficial, but try to get close with the Quran. Also, call each other for the month of Ramadan. Call each other and remind each other with a verse from the Book of Allah. Remind each other with some hadith. Remind each other of something good. Remind each other of doing something that try to help one another to get up for suhoor. Okay? And be mindful not to eat so much. Do not try to eat so much. That's both for suhoor and both for iftar. Extremely important, brothers and sisters. Extremely important. The month of Ramadan is not about you gaining weight or you eating like you would eat the previous month before. The month of Ramadan is a spiritual training. It is a physical bringing about a physical transformation. It is to make that. If you can work out during this month, I tell you to work out during this month. Long you don't cause yourself to become too much overweak, where you cannot perform the actual thing. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallahu khairan. May Allah Jalla wa Ala accept all of our righteous deeds and accept our fast in this month. And may Allah Jalla wa Ala reward us. Subhanallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.